A Galene Woman is journaling their way to self-care. Hi there, I'm Cole, and this is the A Galene Woman Is podcast, the safe haven for all those looking for a break, the home of nice smelling candles, and a justified mani-pedi for the sake of your health. That's definitely the weirdest thing I've ever written. But really, this is your safe space to relax and do a little self-care just for you. Today's episode is about genuinely one of my favourite topics, and that's journaling. Now, don't get me wrong, I've had many an unfinished journal, which I promised myself I would complete and write in every day, but of course, never did. This episode is going to be me explaining to you how I changed that, plus my perspective on the whole concept of journaling and why it truly is such a brilliant way to engage in self-care. I've included a few different types of journaling, a few little prompts, and just why it's such a brilliant little self-care activity to include in your daily life. As always, this is the time, while you're listening to this, to take it and do something entirely for yourself. Go find some sunshine, go take a wander to your favourite coffee shop and get a drink, or snuggle up on the sofa. I think it would be fair to say that self-care has definitely become a bit of a catch-all phrase for a lot of different activities, including journaling, which is perhaps what puts people off. I think it can feel like someone is kind of sat on your shoulder when you're going in with the wrong intentions and you're kind of doing it because everybody says you should be doing it. And, you're not actually convinced it's going to help you. I've been there before, weirdly worried about what I should say when I write journals. It's not a great feeling, but I think when you can clear your headspace and you can actually approach it with your self-care in mind, with a mindful intention, the process of journaling actually becomes such a helpful thing. But the thing is, I believe once you click with journaling and you find your way with it, even though this does take a minute, and you realize how it works for you, it truly is a godsend of an activity. As I said earlier, I've never really been a journaler. Maybe when the mood took me, but there was a bit of a catalyst, shall I say, that really got me into the right circumstances, the right headspace to just really want to try and figure it out for myself. And that is why now it's such a helpful tool in processing any sort of situation. And I really want to express to you guys how you can use this too. Journaling is simple, really. It's not exactly a complicated thing that we're talking about here. It's literally just writing down your thoughts in any way you wish. I really do believe this is always the bit that kind of gets forgotten because there's so much out there telling you how you should structure it, that you need to do X, Y, Z amount of time for it to be effective, that you have to include, specific gratitude lines and this thoughtful comment, and that's what makes journaling. But actually, for me anyway, I find this kind of frustrating because the whole point of writing down how you're feeling and thinking is to help you, for you, and for nobody else to look and say, oh, how aesthetic, that's just not the point. So don't get me wrong, structure or a little guide can be helpful in many ways. I, for example, always write 3 things I'm grateful for, but the reason I do that is because I want to reflect on the good things of my day, not just arbitrarily say, oh, I'm thankful for my friends and family. If the thing that I'm actually grateful for in that day isn't related to that, it might just be, I'm grateful that I got outside today, or I'm grateful that I got a cup of coffee, or I'm grateful that I saw that friend. It's so important for me for that to be a specific thing. Everyone's different, and that's the point I'm trying to highlight. I have friends who are avid journalers, but they only do it when the mood takes them or they have something to process and go over, and that's absolutely fine because it's such a brilliant way to do that kind of thing. Finding your best way to express tangled up feelings and thoughts, or to express happy and grateful moments of your day, whatever you need it for, that's what journaling is there for, and that is what journaling is there and here to do for you. I started consistently journaling, I would say around April kind of time last year, so actually around now, so it's been about a year, mainly because I got broken up with and it was a bit of a doozy and all how it went down, and suffice to say I was left with quite a few things that didn't get answered, or I just needed to feel out, the normal breakup things, I think. And I always think in those kind of situations where there are a lot of emotions present and you're not really sure what to do with them, it can be super, super difficult to articulate to those around you what's actually going on in your head. It's definitely also why I think it can be super easy to pretend you're all right on the surface and actually really suffering beneath, because the normal outlet of talking, which we're all told to do when we're in our feels, is actually quite a struggle. Now, I don't have any bad feelings about my ex or the whole situation that played out. I'm very much past it and I really do wish him the best. However, in terms of helping my self-care and looking after myself during a time that was very difficult, my journal did become a bit of my best friend. I got to actually spill out over the page without any judgment or any fear what I was thinking and feeling, and it really just gave me the space to process what had happened to me. And yeah, a breakup is a very, very normal, common thing to happen, but it's a very emotional one, so that's the perfect environment for me to do it. And it's a very freeing thing to do, especially when everything's so muddled, and if you've had a particularly complex situation happen, it just gives you that space. And that's what I love about it, is that concept of space. I processed, I accepted it, I found love in the situation that I had, and found love for the one I have now because I'm single. But the space brought a lot of peace, and I think that's why I really started to include gratitude into my journal, because through writing it all out, I was able to find gratitude and peace in the whole thing and in the present moment, which is definitely the most important factor for me now. The benefits of having some sort of regular journaling cannot be understated, as I'm sure you've gathered from what I've said so far. I think from everything I've just said, the big one for me was clearly clarity, but the ability to see what actually happened, know how I felt, emotionally understand why XYZ decision was made. It's that clarity and release that sometimes you just can't get when everyone is giving their opinion on something you're going through, because it is literally just you and the pen. Like there's no other voice going on. Aside from that, self-reflection and journaling encourages you to actually pause on what's going on in your life. It can be so easy to move on to the next worry or think about the next thing that's going on in your life. Just go from the next to the next to the next. And you can do that without really recognizing what's going on in your everyday and seeing what in the present moment at your very time is really good and really positive. It gives you a deeper understanding of the life that you're actually living every single day, and therefore a better understanding of yourself. Your life is now, the moment you're in. Journaling just helps you really connect with that. Something that also comes off the back of this is that natural reduction of stress. I've been reading a few articles on this and a few studies as a part of the research for the podcast episode, and several studies have actually found that writing about stressful or sad situations and events has been shown to decrease symptoms of depression and anxiety. I will try and find the article and the specific study that references that, because I know some of you guys will find that really interesting. But having the ability to emotionally express yourself is something we all deserve the ability and time to do. We can't always access all the resources out there to help us process the everyday to the serious. Not everyone can go to therapy, not everyone thinks that's a viable option, but we all have access to a pen and paper. If that's something I can guarantee every single one of you has, it's a pen and paper. So I really want to get into now the different ways you can approach journaling and to find what actually works for you. As I said earlier, a big thing with journaling is, one, not finding the wealth of information around you and how to do it overwhelming, and two, figuring out what works effectively in your life. We're going to look at a few ways I think are most effective in getting you started, even if you only do it when you're feeling a bit down or only when you want to go think something through. These ideas of journaling really, really can help. But remember, it's about what you want to get out of it. So that should be your focus when you're listening to the different types. If something sounds a bit like meh for you, then that's okay. But, consider your situation, whatever you want to get out of having a presence of mind and engaging in mindfulness and, connecting with yourself. What do you want to get out of that? That's what this is about. The first way you could journal is known as stream of consciousness journaling, which I actually struggled to say there. A stream of consciousness journaling, which is kind of a fancy way of just saying writing what you're thinking as it comes to you. The good thing about this method is it just lets you flow onto the page and get it all out in whatever words seem right to you in the moment. No grammar, no worries, no structure, or even coherence, really. It's just like letting your thoughts guide you. It really can just make absolute bubble sense if you really just need to, blurt. But it's such an unfiltered way of writing, it can help you figure out and process what's actually happening up there in your head and kind of reduce the stress and overwhelm of a situation because you've actually given yourself the chance to see it explained on a page. I think it's always easier to understand what's going on when you're asked to explain it in, almost bullet point form. Writing, I feel, automatically makes you feel like you have to simplify things. So if you're going through a breakup, or if you're struggling with your parents, or if you're having a really tough situation at work or university, or there's a real friendship issue, sometimes we get bogged down in those tiny little details of what's going on. But when you actually sit down and write about what's going on and how it's actually played out, I always find it so much simpler than what we feel like we have to make it into. It's that idea of mentally decluttering, which can really open doors for you in terms of finding solutions and light bulb moments and just insights you may not have considered before about something that's maybe plaguing you for quite a while. This kind of journaling is perfect if you're not really wanting to commit to everyday journaling, because I know that's not for everyone, but still kind of want to reap the benefits of it, if you know what I mean, in a low-key way. It's cathartic, and you can pretty much guarantee that you will feel better after, or at least a lot clearer on the situation. But I think this is one of those really good things to have in your mental arsenal of stuff you can do to look after yourself when you're going through a hard time. And, stream of consciousness journaling, or just blurting, is such an effective way to mentally say to yourself, oh, I know I can do that later, or I can do this now, to actually really process what's going on. The next one I personally do, and I really, really love because it's so quick but really impactful, and that is gratitude journaling. Now, there's a couple ways you can take this. I add it onto my reflective kind of daily journal of my day, which I will talk about in a moment. But essentially, the premise of gratitude journaling, as I'm sure you've guessed, is basically to consider the things you're grateful for, whether that's from the day you've had, the life you're currently in right now. That's kind of up to you what you choose to focus on. I always think it's a really good idea, if you're struggling with a negative mood, to try and do the stuff that happened during the day, mainly because it really, really helps you stay present and recognize little things rather than just the general picture. And when you're in a negative mood, there is nothing more disheartening than just thinking, oh my god, the world is ending, the life is over, because everything feels so bad, when actually there have been moments during your day that did maybe make you smile, or maybe brought you comfort in some way. And taking time to think about those and giving those the light that they deserve. I don't know, when I've struggled with my PMDD and I've had those moments of just blah, there is nothing more enlightening than knowing that there are moments that are actually positive in your everyday life. Gratitude journaling, I would quite easily say, is the most important step of my evening routine, because even if I've had a bad day, I'm struggling, or as I say, my PMDD is kicking up really badly, I get a second to actually think about the positives. And I tend to write 3 things, because 3 is a nice number. And honestly, it never takes me more than 5 minutes to come up with them. And I also do try and make them different every day. Otherwise, I feel like the value of reflecting on what you're grateful for is kind of lost, because you're just saying the same things. But it really is the simplest way to use journaling every day and make it impactful. So you actually notice the difference of, yeah, actually that was really fun, or I really enjoyed that, or that was such a nice moment. This next way to journal is one I've already kind of touched on already, but again, it comes in many different formats. Reflective journaling. Now, this means you, at the end of your day, maybe at the end of your week, And I know people that do it at the end of the month as well, which, it's not quite my style, but if you can reflect on your entire month and go for it. It's basically a review of what happened, how it made you feel. It's really good to include things like what you've learned or things you're hoping to take into the future and move forward with. Honestly, this method is brilliant if you're trying to understand your personal growth, which I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast is definitely somewhere in your mental capacity right now. And it really, really increases your self-awareness because you take this time to look back at the time you've had. It's almost an emotive way of methodically engaging with your behaviour, your thoughts, your feelings, your reactions, and reflecting on how you actually feel about the choice you made or the reaction you had to something in your life. I don't think we do this enough. I don't think we actually take the time, positive or negative, to consider how we are responding and behaving in an everyday scenario, because that tells us more about ourselves than anything else. And as someone who has a mood disorder, looking back at the parts of my week or the month that were impacted by my luteal phase is so helpful, because it just helps me figure out and recognize my symptoms and how to actually care for myself when I'm experiencing that kind of situation. So if I've got an essay due, for example, because I'm still a student, so much fun. If I've got an essay due and I know that I'm in my luteal phase, I know my reaction to the reading, the criticism and feedback that I'm given off the back of that essay are probably not going to be taken as well as if I've just come off my period or I'm in my follicular phase or whatever, because I'm just generally not feeling great. It just helps me be more understanding towards myself and, give myself some creds when creds are due, and it gives you exactly the same space. It allows you to actually celebrate the things you've achieved, which can sometimes just get lost in it all. As I've kind of said before, it's so easy to just focus on the things you need to change, do differently, and all the negatives that come out of daily life. There's plenty of them. But when you're reviewing your time and all the pieces that have happened in it, it's so much clearer to see the successes, the mini wins, the good stuff that you've actually got, because I can guarantee it's there, which obviously is such a great boost for your mood. This was a recommendation. So the next one was a recommendation that came up while I was researching for this podcast. And honestly, I kind of love this. I was a huge drawer as a kid. And although I wouldn't say I'm, fabulous at it, the enjoyment of creating a little of explosion of emotional expression or, something I've found fascinating, it's such a good way to track your life and reminisce of the good things and the bad, to be fair. You've got to include it all. So art journals, which is, I should actually have just started with art journals. That's what I'm talking about here. Give you the space where you can combine your writing, if you want, with bits and pieces of artwork or just your life, really. I had a journal when I was on my gap year that I just filled with train stubs, plane tickets, postcards, little doodles of, that I did when I was in XYZ location. And honestly, it's so lovely to look back on it, as it just kind of reflects me at the time and the life I was living. And I still do that kind of thing in my journal now. I doodle a lot, make little commentaries on the things that I've said in the past, and usually in a different colour pen. That's a lot of fun. I always find that fun if I'm kind of reflecting on the things that I've written in previously. But yeah, kind of getting artsy with it. It's basically what I'm trying to say. Get artsy with your journals if you're trying to find a therapeutic activity to do. Now, obviously, this does dedicate a little bit more time, but I think if you're a sentimental and you love to add a bit of colour and actually just want to include something that you feel like is a bit more of a visual expression of how you're feeling, this is absolutely it, and such a wonderful way to engage with your creativity and peace of mind. I just think there is nothing more calming, personally, than sitting down, writing, doing a bit of doodling. It's it takes your mind off everything. So the next one, I have a little bit of a bugbear with, because it's obviously main recommended way of journaling, but I'm not a huge fan. We've all seen them. The journals that lay everything out for you, guided journals, they really can be great. I'm not going to knock them wholeheartedly. And if you feel a little bit lost with the whole journal idea, but you really do want to start, They are a great place to go to. However, I kind of personally take the opinion that while they're a great place to start, they really shouldn't be forever. I feel as though the best way to understand yourself really just is journaling with a normal lined, not even lined, doesn't even need to be lined, notepad, do you know what I mean? And journal, diary, or whatever you use. You know, I feel like journaling does have to move beyond a set of questions, and, you know, you need to find a structure that suits you. But obviously this is just my opinion, but I really find guided journals not only limited in space, that's a big thing for me, I cram the page full of words, but also limited in the sense that, like, sometimes the questions you're actually being asked don't resonate with you. I remember that I bought a particular guided journal, and I want to say it was like stoicism focused, but I may be totally wrong, so don't quote me on that. But it was like a question a day kind of situation, and I really struggled with it because I wasn't always sitting there and thinking, yeah, this is the kind of thing I want to write about right now. I actually really want to write about something else. So yeah, I think that's my biggest issue with them. Sometimes the questions just don't resonate, or that there's something you're thinking of that just doesn't align with whatever the guided journal wants you to do. So it can make it tough, because I totally understand why these things are super helpful for people, especially when you're stuck or you've got writer's block, or you need somewhere to go. But I don't know, I just don't think it's as freeing as having a pen and paper to actually figuring out what's going on in your mind. I guess my recommendation off the back of this is looking up prompts and ideas for journal styles if you're really, really struggling to get something down or to know what direction to take with your journal. You know, Pinterest may be the home of aesthetic pictures, but there are also actually quite a lot of resources on there that are around journaling, and you will definitely find something that resonates. Figuring out how you want to journal is basically trial and error, and deciding its purpose and its intention within your self-care and the way you look after yourself is going to be all part and parcel of your self-care journey. And it's okay if you engage with one and it totally sucks and you're just like, this is not for me, I don't get this, but you try a few others and then you finally find that something really clicks for you. Another part that I've mentioned, and I know you're all thinking, it's all well and good deciding how I want to journal, but how on earth do I stick to it? Because let's face it, that's the big question. Sticking with a journal is something we have all in our lives struggled with. This obviously requires a little bit of initial motivation, but I'm going to take the fact that you're listening to the podcast as a sign of that. And then you just need a little bit of discipline, which, especially if you want to make this a regular thing, it doesn't have to be every day, of course, but if it's your intention to make journaling a part of your life, then there are so many ways to encourage yourself to pick up your pen and pick up the pad and just start writing. I've had a few tricks that have really helped me, and the first one, if you don't live with someone who you're scared that will take a peek at it, is literally keeping it on my bedside table. Clearly viewable and next to whatever I'm reading at the time. This is probably the answer to how I've managed to keep going, because it's right there, it's right next to me, and I know no one's going to be reading it, so I don't have any fear of putting it there. But yeah, sometimes you just simply have to see the thing to remember that you want to do it, and that's enough of a motivator. However, if you need a little bit more to remind you to do it and make a habit out of it, however you want that habit to look, I do have a few more tricks. The first one is investing in a nice journal. I don't mean expensive. I definitely don't mean one that's like stupidly fancy. I just mean one that you can dedicate to your journaling specifically. Has your name on it and all that. I always put like a little C at the bottom of the first page, and it's kind of my little signifier that that's my journal. And I think there's something about personalizing your journal and personalizing that space that really helps you connect to the process of writing out your feelings and emotions, because it's yours. It's your little space to do that. It's your pages, it's your book, it's your life, and it's such a cute little touch and to a really, really relaxing and mindful activity. It's just making it good, you know? It's got to feel good. The next one is perhaps unsurprising, and that is just always keeping a pen next to it. You know, for me, there's some satisfaction in using the same pen all the way through, and maybe that's just my brain, But I really do feel like it helps with consistency. It's also just about making your life a whole lot easier by always having a pen by it, because you don't spend, like, I always used to have this habit of, like, I'd want a journal and then I wouldn't be able to find a pen for like 10 minutes. It just makes the whole process, like, I've basically killed the time that I wanted to spend on journaling just looking for a pen. So designated journal, designated pen, it's those little tricks that just make this process a whole lot easier. Next is to add it into a routine that already exists in your life, i.e. going to bed before you read, after doing some sort of morning or evening ritual where you know you could add it in. Again, sounds simple, but that's what it's about. Making this feel as easy as possible. I personally love to journal before bed because, as I've said, I like to use my journaling as a time to reflect, and going into sleep in a positive mood is just so much nicer than being bogged down in the dumps about something and completely ignoring the good that I have actually had that day. Obviously, this will be easier for some than others, and I'm totally appreciative of this. Key for starting journaling, especially if you're someone with not a lot of time but you really do want to try, is to really, really, really think about what kind of journaling you want to do, because some of the things I've suggested would be better than others. If you think a time to mentally reflect is going to really help and aid your self-care and taking care of yourself on a regular basis, don't ignore it just because you're busy. I would absolutely recommend putting it right at the beginning or right at the end of your day, so there's absolutely nothing that it can get in the way of. When you're going to bed, what's your next step? It's sleep. So you can give yourself 5 minutes to write something down. Even if you're only writing in your journal once a week, knowing that there is a designated spot for it in your life means it becomes so much easier to autopilot that action so much quicker. And of course, be kind and considerate when you start afresh with any habit or self-care activity, because this is so crucial to keeping your desire of wanting to do it. You're gonna have days where journaling just isn't the answer to your problem, and if you're trying to do it daily, you might have a day where you miss it because XYZ happened and you weren't able to get there in time. But it's not over. It doesn't mean you failed or that you should give up. If you find the process of doing something fulfilling, then you should want to make a point of doing it a lot. And if that's journaling, that's journaling. For however long, for however many pages, if you can get yourself into a headspace that actively enjoys it because you know you want to do it and you know that you enjoy it, little by little, journaling really can be such a healthy way to process and take a pause on your life and add it into your self-care. It's like I've come to say a lot in this podcast, doing an activity like journaling gives you the evidence that you truly do take time in your week to actively care for yourself, that you do look out for yourself, and with journaling, you're giving yourself a moment of pause. It's easy to get lost in the details with journaling, wanting to make it pretty, wanting to do it in a very specific way because such and such guru said it was like the perfect answer to your problems. But the brilliance of journaling is that it does not matter at all. As I said earlier, if you read the pages of my journal, I'm not sure they would make a hell of a lot of sense. One, because my handwriting is awful, but two, because I cram so much in. It doesn't matter how or what you do, it's just about doing it. And it's yours to invest in for your thoughts and your feelings, to actively connect to your emotional state. It's so important. I thought, however, I would leave you guys with a few of my favourite personal journal prompts when I'm having a bit of a writer's block or I just kind of want to focus on something specific. So you don't have to use them. They're simply here for inspiration. Maybe if you've already got a journal, write them down, use them as a bit of a springboard for your next session. But honestly, this is just how I like to approach it. And if it's helpful for you, it's helpful for you. But there is plenty of stuff out there, which I'm sure you'll be able to find very quickly and very easily that can help you. So here they are. Number 1, what made me smile or happy today? Why? And if not, why? Number 2, how did I look out for myself today? If not, why? Number 3, what could have made today even better? And is there a way I could do it tomorrow? I love all of these because they're focused on finding the good. Simple as that. But you don't have to have a positive answer to these questions because they still give you the same space to answer it honestly and reflect on why you might not have a positive answer. There's nothing more frustrating than feeling like you can't articulate or have the space to express your thoughts and what's going on inside. Your self-care should be focused on relieving these little stress points, like not having a way to articulate yourself in a calming and peaceful way. And journaling really could be the brilliant answer you're looking for. And you should definitely try it for a while before you give up. You can't write your way into happiness or peace. I totally get it. But you will be amazed, and I stand as testament, how impactful it can be to consider it just for a minute. Consider that positiveness, that positive vibe, that positive thought, just for a minute, just for a second, every day, or every couple of days, or just once a flipping week, I imagine. And where it is in your life too, where that positivity is. You deserve to remember and know how much good there is out there supporting you and loving you in your daily life. Journaling, forget everything. Journaling is simply a tool that can help you access that positivity. And that is more than all of us can ask for. And that closes our episode on why Galene women are journaling their way to self-care. Thank you all for listening in. If you took my little note at the beginning to dedicate this time to self-care, I hope it was worth it. And if not, take time, but do take a moment later to breathe, relax, just for you alone, because it's totally well deserved. We actually have quite a few concepts around journaling that we've spoken about on the Galene blog, and I will link a few down below, but definitely check out that space if you're interested in adding a little bit of self-care into your life on a regular basis. www.galenecompany.com is where you will find it. Our next episode, which I have to say is a pretty cool one, I've been excited to talk about this for a while, will be announced on Wednesday on our Instagram at Galene Company, and we're at A Galene Woman Is on TikTok. Follow us if you're ready for this, if you're ready to start your self-care journey. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve it.